1, and you're live, Chairman.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to this Joint Standards Committee meeting on Tuesday, the 26th of January 2021. My name is Councillor Mark Bassinger and I am the chairman of this committee. This meeting is held under new regulations which came into effect on the 4th of April in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. There are just a few housekeeping issues to run through. First of all, please could I ask everyone present in this meeting to ensure your camera remains on where broadband permits and your microphone remains muted when not addressing the committee. This meeting is being hosted remotely, streamed live and recorded. By being present in this meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded.
Chairman, can you just pause for a second, please? Can you check if everybody has their microphones muted, please? Thank you, Chairman. I think that's fine now.
Thank you. I shall continue. Members and officers, during each item, please use the hands up function of the meeting to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Members are reminded that apart from indicating a wish to raise a point of order, that you have to leave the meeting. Please do not use the chat function. Members, when speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please reference a page or paragraph number and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. When invited to speak, please ensure you turn on your microphone. Now, if I may ask officers taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Hodson. And Mr. Hodson, your microphone is muted.
Good afternoon, councillors. It's Norman Hodson, the independent person.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hodson. Mr. Quelch.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. It's Simon Quelch. I'm what's called the monitoring officer for the council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Quelch. Berna.
Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, Chairman. Berna Casey, Clerk to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Berna. Any other officers present? Okay. Before I call on the clerk for the roll call of committee members, can I ask those councillors in attendance to introduce themselves, please?
Councillor Mark Hurd, Chairman of the Council.
Good evening, Mark.
Councillor Penny Channer.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, it's Peter Stilts. I'm a Malvern Town councillor. I'm here as a non-voting member.
Sorry, Chairman, we're just asking those members in attendance. So I believe Councillor Lagan is also in attendance. If you could introduce himself, please. Okay, shall I move to the roll call of committee members, Chairman?
Yes, please, Berna.
Thank you. Members, I will call your names in alphabetical order, starting with Councillor Bassinger.
I'm present. Thank you, Berna.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming.
Present. Thank you, Berna.
Councillor Hull.
Present. Thank you, Berna.
Councillor Mays.
Present, Berna. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Nunn.
Yes, here, Berna, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Siddle.
Here, Berna, good afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Stilts.
Good afternoon, Berna. Good afternoon, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Good afternoon, Berna. Yes, I'm here, and apologies, Chairman, I was not very much on the last minute.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Berna. So where are we? There we are. Okay, item number 2, please. Apologies, Berna. Do we have any?
We've received no apologies for absence, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I shall go to item 3, which is the minutes. It is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of October 2020, found on pages 5 and 10, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. If you wish to second that motion, please unmute your microphone and state your name now. If any member wishes to raise any matter of accuracy, please use the hands up function to indicate, and I will invite you to speak.
Seconded, Councillor Thiddles.
Councillor May.
Okay, so Berna, do we have those minutes noted, or?
Well, Chairman, if nobody has any dissent or any matters of accuracy, we can agree them by assent.
And nobody has asked to speak?
No, Chairman.
Agreed, Chairman. Thank you.
Agreed.
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 Thank you, members. Can we agree those minutes by assent?
Yes.
Yes.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 4, declarations of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 6 to 8 inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. If any member has an interest to declare, please use the hands up function now to indicate, and I will invite you to speak. Thank you very much. And I can see that Councillor Nunn, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll take direction from you, Chair, and from Mr. Quelch, but I didn't know whether to disclose at this point or under item 6/7, but I am acquainted with 2 of the applicants. Could I have direction about whether I disclose now and name that those acquaintances, or what do I do, please?
Thank you, Councillor Nunn. Mr. Quelch, could you please advise, please?
Yes, my view would be you would only, because as councillors, you know lots of people as you're in public life. The only time you need to disclose a non-pecuniary interest, and it would be non-pecuniary, is if you really have a very close relationship with that person. So you would consider them to be a really close friend, and that could have implications for you in the sense of your relationship with them if you don't go in their favour or anything of that nature. So unless you know them in a close with a close relationship, I would say no need to disclose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quelch. Councillor Nunn, does that answer the question for you? Are you happy?
Well, it's difficult to define closeness, isn't it, really? But I know 2 of the applicants, but as Simon has said, you know, I guess I know a lot of people, but I know 2 of them. So non-pecuniary, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stilts, has your hand gone down? Are you happy with that explanation?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. And he was only aware of the name, nothing closer than being aware of the name.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Then we shall move on to item number 5, Committee on Standards in Public Life. We move to agenda item 5, Committee on Standards in Public Life, Best Practices Recommendations, found on pages 11 to 16. I'll just go there if I may. Oh. Thank you. In a moment, I will call on the lead legal specialist and monitoring officer to present the report. Members are reminded, if you wish to speak, please make this known by using the hands up function within the meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succinct. Mr. Quelch, would you please present the report?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, some members on the newly composed Joint Standards Committee may remember this report. It came to the committee back in, I think it was October, and it's all to do with best practice recommendations that have been sent round all local authorities in the country from what is in fact the Government Committee on Standards in Public Life. And some members will remember that we went through some of those best practice recommendations, and the resolution of the Standards Committee in October was that I should return with another report to give any members the opportunity, if they wanted to make comments to me with a view to that possibly influencing what I put in this report. I had one member come to me, and that did tweak something I've said in the report. So the report you now have is with the benefit of members having had that opportunity to come to me, and one member did, and there has been a slight change to my recommendation. Now, back in October, and this is quite significant, some of the issues raised in this best practice recommendations paper would have resulted in a change to the local code of conduct for members. So that would have meant it would have had to have gone to council. You could have only made a recommendation, particularly on the issue of a definition of bullying and harassment. Events have moved on since October, and in December, I think it was the 23rd of December, the Local Government Association have now published a brand new model code of conduct for members, which they are hoping every local authority will adopt. Now, there are some problems with that local code of conduct, and all the monitoring officers in Essex met together recently, and we have major concerns about its clarity. So we have gone back to the Local Government Association and said you need to tidy this up. So the matters on bullying and harassment and defining that, I haven't made a suggestion for a change of the present code, because I'll be coming back to you with a new model code for recommendation to council for adoption, hopefully within the next 6 months or so. So there seems no point in changing that while we have a new code that's about to be foisted on us nationally. So perhaps, Chairman, with your agreement, I can just go through my Appendix 1 and just mention each particular best practice point, and if members want, I'll stop at each point, and if a member has a point, then they can make it. Are you happy with that, Chairman?
Absolutely, thank you, Simon.
Okay, going to Appendix 1, best practice 1 says local authorities should include prohibitions on bullying and harassment in codes of conduct. These should include a definition of bullying and harassment, supplemented with a list of examples of the sort of behaviour covered by such a definition. And I've already mentioned that. I don't think there's any point personally in now changing our old code with a new one just in the wings. I'll pause, Chairman, at that point.
Members, we're okay with that? I think we're okay to carry on, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
best
thank
practice.
you.
Sorry. Best practice 2. Council should include provisions in their code of conduct requiring councillors to comply with any formal standards investigation and prohibiting trivial or malicious allegations by councillors. Well, actually, we already have that in our old code of conduct, paragraphs 3.4 and 3.5, and you can see I've listed them verbatim in Appendix 1. The new model code of conduct will also have something similar, but I think the language is a bit more concise. So we comply with that.
Again, members, are we all happy to concur with that? We do have Councillor Nunn, please, Simon, if you wouldn't mind taking the question.
Okay.
It's an observation, really, Simon. You know, I agree with you about the two best practices, but there's a world of difference between having an explicit entry in a code and its proper application.
Chairman, I agree. Particularly 3.5, I think that may be what Councillor Nunn is referring to, the making of vexatious, malicious or frivolous complaints. And that is something that I, as a monitoring officer, have been concerned about in this council. The number of complaints we had last year was about 23. That far exceeds the average of any council. So I agree with Councillor Nunn. Sometimes having something in the code is one thing, actually making that work is another.
Councillor Nunn, would you like to come back?
I agree with Simon's agreement.
Thank you.
So where does that leave us, Simon?
I think it means that you're okay with best practice, with my response to best practice 2.
Right. Okay, so shall we move on then, please?
Best practice 3. Principal authorities should review their code of conduct each year and regularly seek, where possible, the views of the public, community organisations and neighbouring authorities. Now, it is true that our code was last revised in 2016. But with the new code coming in, hopefully in 2021, as I said, obviously that's going to be an opportunity for a wholesale revision. And the local government of association have promised that they intend to review their model code of conduct, which hopefully we shall adopt, every year. So automatically there will be a process of review. So although we haven't done that on an annual basis, the intention is that we will, triggered by the LGA.
Okay, Councillor Siddle, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Quelch, in terms of outside consultation, who would we go and talk to? Yeah, I can understand the need to go maybe talk to another public organisation, but it says there the public or a community organisation. So who might we consult with?
That's very difficult. The only one I could think of, because I thought someone might ask that question, the only one I could think of is the Citizens Advice Bureau.
Right.
I mean, neighbouring authorities, to be honest with you, I don't see there's a great deal of point, because we're all basically relying on the same draft code. The code we now have was a model code produced by government back in 2014 or wherever it was, and then revised in 2016. We are likely to be adopting the LGA one as well. So all authorities have the same code they're looking at. So I'm not quite sure why the Committee on Public Scrutiny have put that in, best practice 3.
No, that's what I don't.
It's a lack of their understanding of how things work in local government.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we now have Councillor Boyce, please.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm trying to take the hand down.
That's fine, Bob, you carry on. So that's a legacy hand, Bob, or do you have a question? I'm sorry.
He's
okay.
Muted.
Okay. Well, can we come back to...
And that's another problem. Right.
Okay.
Sorry, Chairman.
That's fine. Do you have a question, though, Councillor Boyce?
No, I thought it was probably undiplomatic to ask the question I was going to ask, so I decided not to.
Well, that's entirely up to you, but I think we could all weather a little diplomacy and non-diplomacy. If you wish to ask the question, perhaps, you know, why not? Or are you happy not to? I'm sorry.
Chairman, no, I'm
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Boyce. Can I move to Councillor Stilts, please? I'm afraid you're.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I've just found that moot. Yeah, I'd include. Right, I think this document should be considered as a living document, and therefore will include instead of can include. The reason for this, I've been involved in service organisations where they've left it to be reviewed at some later time, and it's gone on several years and become out of date. So I think it should be seen every year whether we need to make amendments or not, just to check up on that. And also with that, it should have the next review date, month and year inserted. So it is a trigger straight away that we know when the next one's coming up and can prepare any observations we need to make.
Thank you. I think they're fair points. Simon, any problems with that?
Yeah, I mean, members could actually resolve now when they want the next review to be. I mean, I think that's probably premature because this year there is going to be a wholesale look at a new code of conduct, as I said. At that particular point, maybe members will say, this is the review time we want. Although, as I've said, the LGA have promised they are going to review it every year.
Okay, very well. Is that an answer for you, Councillor Stilts? Because I think that's a fair point, and I think we should note that point. And
yes, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, could we continue then, please?
Best practice 4, Chairman, is an authorities code should be readily accessible to both councillors and the public in a prominent position on a council's website and available in council premises. Now, there's two parts to this. We do have a link to the code of conduct on the council's website. On the home page there is a section, if you go into it you'll see, I think, councillors, and you go on to that and that will link you through to the code of conduct. You may have to go through 1 or 2 layers, but as you can imagine, in a council you can't have every single matter, and they're all important issues, as a first layer matter. Yeah. It's not possible on a website. So it seems to me that it's available. If a member of the public really wants to see what the code of conduct says, it won't take them long to get to it, in my view. Now, in relation to council premises, prominence, there is competition. First of all, obviously the council offices are not open, haven't been open since March. But when and if they do open, then there is competition for prominence, for lots of information. Again, I think this is a problem of the committee. They don't really understand. They've got one thing on their minds, whereas councils have many functions that are important. So actually to put something in a prominent position means that something else that perhaps might be more important is relegated to a non-prominent position. I think personally, what's really important is to have the code of conduct readily available on the website. And we're certainly, as a local authority, along with all local authorities, we are encouraging people down the digital route. And so that's what we should be doing. And so that will be my response to their best practice 4.
Thank you. Could I go to Councillor Thompson, please?
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. Too many buttons to press in too short. I didn't actually interpret it in quite the same way that Mr. Quelch has. That it should be in a prominent position on the website. Yeah, I do agree with that. But it only says and available in council premises. It doesn't actually say it should be displayed in a prominent place in council premises.
Okay.
And certainly, you know, anyone can walk up. Well, when we're open, anyone can walk up to reception and say, could I have a copy, please? I mean, it should be that easily available. And perhaps on the website it should say, obviously only when appropriate, that it's also available from at reception if anyone wants to have a look. But, you know, I'm happy with what this says, and I do agree that especially in these times, because COVID isn't going to go away even when the offices are open. I suspect there's going to be more important things competing for the space. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I think that's a very good comment. I think I personally feel that people should be able to go into the council offices and absolutely see our code of conduct, as they should be able to see any of our documents. Really, they should all be freely available, and it shouldn't be a minefield to find them either. And I personally find the website particularly difficult to negotiate. And I do think the code of conduct should be one of those things which should be easy and accessible to everybody. So I think that's a very good comment. Mr. Quelch, shall we continue, please?
Yep, okay. Best practice 5. Local authorities should update their gifts and hospitality register at least once per quarter and publish it in an accessible format. And they use such as CSV. The register held by my response is that the register held by Fresh Service, which members will be familiar with and the public probably won't, but it's an administration service that all employees and councillors can use to get things done. They raise tickets and then administrative staff provide whatever is necessary from that ticket. So the register is held by Fresh Service and is updated by me as soon as the matter is declared by a councillor. So in effect, this becomes a daily update. To use Councillor Stilt's reference, it's like a living document. Now, although the public don't have automatic access to it, they can request access to the register, and that will be provided to them in a form that's convenient to them, just as we would with a freedom of information request. Obviously, we would make it more available much quicker than a freedom of information request, but we would ask them what format do you want it.
Okay, I have Councillor Hull and Councillor Thompson and Councillor Boyce. I shall go to Councillor Hull first, please.
Thank you, Chairman. With gifts that you have to say, register, what sort of gifts would you say they would be? Like if somebody gives you a plant or chicken or something like that, or how?
Let me just go. I'm just dipping down. I'm getting the register itself. The register itself, sorry, the local code of conduct itself deals with the issue of hospitality, and it's paragraph 11 for those who like the science, and it says that you need to notify me in writing of any gift, benefit or hospitality with a value in excess of £50, which you have accepted as a member. So it's as a member, that's really important, from any person or body other than the authority. And then it's my responsibility to ensure that that's put on the register of gifts and hospitality. So you've got to assess the value. So a plant is, unless it's a very exotic plant, is unlikely to be in excess of £50.
And so too the chicken. Yeah.
So too the chicken, yeah. But it also has to be given to you as a member. So say, for example, you've done some ward work for someone living in your ward and they're very grateful for what you've done, so they bring you a chicken or they bring you a plant. That's clearly as a member. But if purely you receive a gift generally in your life, you don't have to declare that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
Otherwise, all birthday presents will be registrable.
Including chickens. Could we go to Councillor Thompson, please?
Thank you. I was going to ask, is the chicken alive or dead? Rather fancy.
It was certainly alive.
Sorry, to the point, Chairman, I apologise. It's just a comment. I'm really not at all sure that CSV would be considered these days as a particularly accessible format. How many of us here actually know what CSV is? I'm sure PDF would be more appropriate, but this is going to change with the new code anyway. So just out of interest, hands up those who know what CSV is. Yeah, I thought not. Thank you.
Yes, I
Could I go to Councillor Boyce, please?
Chairman, I'm not comfortable with this gift hospitality register being in effect hidden from the public via fresh service. In my view, it should have the same relevance as the register of interests and should be as readily available.
Thank you, Councillor Boyce. Mr. Quelch, could you?
Yeah, I certainly understand Councillor Boyce's sentiment. I have a slight reservation about that, and that in that it's not just the member whose name would go down. It would be the person or body from whom they received it, and that concerns me that it's just so readily available. It is available to the public, but if it was just available there for direct access by anybody, I don't know that donees would really be that happy about. Sorry, the donor will be that happy about that. Again, the public do have access, but I think it should be because they specifically have a concern about a particular councillor. So they want to see what hospitality they've received. I think it for just to be willy-nilly available, I don't think it's personally fair on those donors.
Councillor Boyce, would you like to come back?
Chairman, yes, I cannot accept, I can understand what Mr. Quelch is saying, but I cannot accept it because there is a contradiction there. And the contradiction is that if anybody wishes to dig, they can find this information. So it is therefore available to the public. And this seems to me still to be an attempt to hide from the public that a councillor had received hospitality in excess of £50. It may be a new car. Now, I don't know that the donor is who the donor is relevant. Just the fact that the councillor had received such hospitality.
So I think, Mr. Quelch, what Councillor Boyce is saying is that it isn't so much, you know, the gift we could certainly make public, where the donor we could keep anonymous. In effect, the fact is that you would know that the gift had been given and a councillor had received such a gift. Is that where we're going?
The problem is then the register loses a significant amount of value because members of the public that want to interrogate the register may want to know who these donors are, and that may be very relevant to the gift to the councillor who's received it. I mean, for example, if Councillor A is receiving lots of gifts from one particular person, that may be very relevant. Now, if you only see the number of gifts received but don't know who they're coming from, it's not so useful to the members of the public.
Councillor Boyce, I'll just come back to you again, if I may.
Well, I can hear what Mr. Quelch is saying, but it just doesn't stack up. If the public can, through interrogation of our systems, find this information, why withhold it?
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Boyce. I think I shall move on from this because I think we've sort of aired this a little bit and I do understand where you're coming from. Could I go to Councillor Stilts, please?
Thank you. It's an interesting dilemma because if the information is so readily available, the public have access to the councillor's private details that maybe aren't relevant. Now, when I was the mayor, or both times, I was possibly receiving gifts which weren't of that value, so it didn't have to be displayed. But I had an allotment. I was getting grief, shall we say, from some of the other allotment holders. Thought it was funny to, oh, well, you must be getting this, you must be getting that. And I think if it had been on public display, if it had to be, it'd been even more. They thought it was a joke, but in actual fact, after about a year, it got really, really to the point I didn't want to go to the allotment. You know, it was continuous. So I think we've got to be very careful with this. The other thing is, if it's not displayed at all, then some councillors may be tempted not to declare anything because they may getting feedback from members of the public who think they're having a laugh. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stilts. Could I go to Councillor Thompson, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm actually just wondering, and Mr. Quelch, I'm sure, can help us with the answer. I mean, are we entitled to publish names of donors? Are we getting into GDPR territory now?
That to some extent is my concern, but the code of conduct, which has the force of law statute, does require disclosure of the gift from any person or body. Now, you can just say, oh, that just means you put in the gift, but then it sort of, to some extent, becomes of it's significantly less valuable to a member of the public just to know that a councillor's received quite a bit, but not know the source. So it seems to me to make the Register of Gifts and Hospitality useful, you do need to say the source. Now, when the Code of Conduct says the monitoring officer will place your notification on a public register, it doesn't say how public that has to be. A register can still be public in the sense that you have to request the information to be sent to you. That doesn't make it not public, if you see what I mean. Just simply because there is a process, an administrative process you have to follow to obtain the information, doesn't make it, it doesn't cease to be a public register.
Okay. Could I go to Councillor Nunn, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, call me naive, Chairman, but I can't imagine why anybody would want to accept gifts, to be honest with you, apart from a pen or something of that nature. Certainly, unless I misunderstood what Councillor Boyce said about a car, you know, I can't imagine any councillor feeling it's right to accept a gift of that nature from a member of the general public. If somebody offered me a Rolex or a car or something, I would wonder what they were after and why. And I know it's slightly different for members compared with officers, but when I was an officer, we had to declare any gifts of calendars and pens. But actually, it was up to the line manager to authorise whether that gift could be accepted or not. And if anybody offered me a gift, A, I wouldn't accept it, or B, if it was a minor one, I think I'd speak to Mr. Quelch to say, I'm telling you, I'm accepting this gift. How do you feel about that?
Thank you, Councillor Nunn. I think you're absolutely correct. I think we all understand that if we accept gifts such as cars, chickens, Rolexes, etc., we are opening ourselves to all sorts of problems. And I'm pretty sure we all are more than aware that we would contact Mr. Quelch should anyone offer us anything at all. So I think we should now move on, please, if we may.
Chairman, could I just make one point I think would help on, with your permission, is that I take Councillor Nunn's point, but I think this is more dealing with where a member is invited to an event as a member and they're given hospitality. So there may be a hospitality tent, and let's just say the chairman is invited to an event as the chairman, and it's a very expensive meal, and so he's offered hospitality. Now that would need to be declared. I think that's where the register is probably more likely to be relevant.
And again, thank you, Mr. Scott. I do think that most of us probably would be aware that if we were invited and we were given a lavish meal or whatever, we would know to declare that. So anyway, can we move on now, please?
Yeah. Best practice 6. Councils should publish a clear and straightforward public interest test against which allegations are filtered. So the allegations are where there is a complaint made that a member has breached the code of conduct. At the moment, when a complaint is made, I will contact Mr. Hodson as the independent person, and we will discuss the case to decide what is the best way to deal with it. We do not have a published public interest test, though naturally between ourselves, Mr. Hodson and I take that into account. And so as we do not have a public interest test which has been published, I have put one in that members may want to consider, and I've recommended that you might want to accept that public interest test and put it into the complaints procedure information. It's based on the Ombudsman for Wales's public interest tests when he has to decide whether he investigates a complaint. And as you can see, reading down, the public interest factors to be taken into account in his test are the seriousness of the breach, whether the member deliberately sought personal gain for themselves or another person at the public expense, whether the circumstances of the breach are such that a member has misused a position of trust or authority and caused harm to another, and whether the breach was motivated by any form of discrimination against the victim's ethnic or national origin, gender, disability, age, religion or belief, sexual orientation or gender identity. I think although the 3 bullet points, the 3 last bullet points perhaps are more specific, the first one covers anything else really, the seriousness of the breach. So if they're not mentioned, if there isn't discrimination, if there isn't abuse of power, for example, then you can still look at the seriousness of the breach and decide whether it's worth being investigated.
Thank you, members. Are we all happy with that? I think we are, Mr. Quelch. Could we move on, please?
So, Chairman, would you specifically want that to actually do members? I want that put into the complaints procedure information.
I mean, I personally am very pleased to see that is there, I must admit. So I don't know what the other members think, but I do have Thompson. So
happy to propose that, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. And Councillor May has seconded. So thank you very much. Yes, please, we would.
Okay. Best practice 7. Local authorities should have access to at least 2 independent persons. We do. We have access to Mr. Hodson, who I have to say has been a terrific support to me. I have valued his advice and his wisdom, and he has often modified my views and assisted me. And the reserve is Mr. Stephen Anthony, who did actually step into the breach, if you recall, in relation to a serious complaint that was made at the beginning of last year, because Mr. Hodson had a conflict of interest. So yes, we have 2 independent persons.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on.
Best practice 8. An independent person should be consulted as to whether to undertake a formal investigation or an allegation, should be given the option to review and comment on allegations which the responsible officer is minded to dismiss as being without merit, vexatious or trivial. And our procedure, our complaints procedure that forms a part of the Constitution, requires that I contact the independent person about how to progress a complaint.
I think we're all agreed on that one, members, are we? Can we move on? Thank you, Mr. Koch.
Best practice 9, where a local authority makes a decision on an allegation of misconduct following a formal investigation, decision notice should be published as soon as possible on its website, including a brief statement of facts, the provisions of the code engaged by the allegation, the view of the independent person, the reasoning of the decision maker, and any sanction. Now I've applied. Now we do we do issue decision notices, and they do go onto the website, but only where there's been a contravention. My personal view is that it would be wrong to put onto the website a decision notice which says there has been no breach, simply because, unfortunately, human nature being what it is, we always think there is no smoke without fire, even though no case has been established. And I think, personally, I think it's unfair that a member's name should go onto a website with an allegation, even though that allegation hasn't been substantiated. In other words, my view is it should only apply to members that have breached the code.
I mean, I would agree with that. We've got Councillor Siddle, please.
Yeah, I would agree also with the monitoring officer there. Yeah, we should only really be publishing things where there has been a breach, not where there's an allegation, because that is, yeah, the ideal way of creating negative publicity about a situation that doesn't exist. So yeah, I think we need to agree with the monitoring officer.
I agree with you, Councillor Siddle. Councillor Hull, please. You're muted, Councillor Hull.
Sorry, just to say I'd agree as well, strongly.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce, please.
Well, I don't necessarily agree, because I can remember a case of allegations against a member that caused that particular person a lot of grievance and heartache, and they wanted their exoneration to be published because the allegations had been bandied about, I think, even in the press, and then for it to suddenly go silent, as far as the public were concerned, they believed that that was unacceptable. So I think whether that is published or not should depend upon what discomfort, disruption and upset had been caused to the person that had allegedly been breaking the code.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
I just wonder whether Mr. Quelch can remember that particular case.
I don't, but I understand what Councillor Boyce is saying, and I think, Chairman, my stance would be that if a member who had been found not guilty of breaching the code said to me, I really want that publicised on the website, I would just put it on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Quelch. Could I go to there's no more hands. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay, I think we can move on. Thank you, Simon.
Best practice 10, a local authority should have straightforward and accessible guidance on its website on how to make a complaint under the Code of Conduct, the process for handling complaints, and an estimated timescale for investigations and outcomes. We have all of that. It is there on our website, and there is a link that provides that information on the home page under the section for councillors.
Excellent. Can we move on, please?
Best practice 11, formal standards complaints about the conduct of a parish council towards the clerk should be made by the chairman, by the chair, or by the parish council as a whole, rather than the clerk in all but exceptional circumstances. Well, my view is that's not a matter for the district council. That's a matter for the parishes themselves to decide. We shouldn't be dictating to the parishes how they deal with that.
I agree with that. Is everyone happy with that? Could we go to Councillor Stilts, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a matter for the parishes themselves and not the district council. But just look, it would sorry, I'm looking through my notes. It would be desirable for this to be on each parish / town standing orders, as there have been cases in the past where the clerk daren't report those who cause them a problem, because they're the people who actually do the clerk's annual review. So we have a slight problem there. I'd love to tell someone, but I daren't, because this person writes my review, and it's for my performance and possibly pay increase as well. That makes sense.
I think it does, Mr. Quelch.
Yes, I mean, I can, if members want me to, I could send this best practice 11 to all the parish council clerks, and they can decide what they want to do about it in terms of changing their constitution.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you. I certainly agree with Mr. Quelch that this is not something that the district council should be able to enforce. But I'm not even sure about asking them to change their constitutions, because doesn't that put this hypothetical clerk in an even worse position? Should he or she wish to complain, and it's part of their parish council's constitution that they can only go to the last person in the whole world they want to go to. That just troubles me a bit. I think the clerk ought to be able to be free to come straight to wherever, and I wouldn't like to be party to changing that. Thank you.
Chairman, I actually agree with Councillor Thompson. I think that must be right.
I think so too, actually. I think that probably makes the most sense and sort of makes it most accessible, at least. Councillor Stilts.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I quite agree. I've just remembered, actually, my wife attended as your representative, or the AOC representative, on the Clerks Forum. So it could be something brought to town or town and parish clerks via that method instead of being put into standing orders, possibly. So they'll be aware there is that person they can go to for help if there is a problem.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Could we move on, please, Mr. Quelch?
Yeah, best practice 12. Monitoring officers' role should include providing advice, support and management of investigations and adjudications on alleged breaches to parish councils within the remit of the principal authority. They should be provided with adequate training, corporate support and resources to undertake the work. Well, I do that. That's all part of my statutory role. And I also include, whenever there's training on the local code, there was back in 2019, it's due up again, I believe sometime this year, in the summer of this year, I invite parish councils to come onto that training as well. As far as my training is concerned, I get training as I need it. And certainly for a new monitoring officer, then the council would obviously ensure that they understand their particular responsibilities. As far as parish councils are concerned, we also have 2 non-voting nominees, Councillor Stilts being one of them, on the committee. We are still waiting from the EALC for the replacement to Councillor Anderson, and I've written to them a couple of times saying, could you please give a second nomination, but they haven't given it to me yet.
Thank you, Mr. Quelch. We have Councillor Bob Boyce, please.
What was the question?
Best practice 12, Councillor.
I'm talking pounds, shillings and pence. Now, you said, Mr. Quelch, that you had a statutory duty to do this, but does the district council have a means of recovering costs of the service of the monitoring officer to the parish and town councils?
It's not allowed to, Chairman. It's a statutory duty to deal with complaints. The district council is described in statute as a principal council. We are the principal council for all the parishes within the Malden district, and the Localism Act requires that we deal with complaints made against parish councillors, so there will be no power to recharge.
Okay, well, I'd like to now move on, please, if we may now, Mr. Quelch, please.
Best practice 13, we are getting there, Chairman. There's only a couple more left. We've only got 15, or on to 13. Local authority should have procedures in place to address any conflicts of interest when undertaking a standards investigation. Possible steps should include asking the monitoring officer from a different authority to undertake the investigation. Every time there is a case, there is always an assessment as to whether I or the independent person or anybody else involved in the investigation has a conflict, and members will be aware that on 2 occasions recently, because of potential conflicts of interest, we have called in monitoring officers from 2 different authorities. There was one engaged at the beginning of last year from Castle Point, and another one has just been, another monitoring officer from Essex County Council has been engaged in relation to an investigation that's going on at the moment. So we are very aware of that and actually act on it.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce, please.
Chairman, there is an issue with local government acts, I believe, which state that a monitoring officer must be employed by the authority for which they act as monitoring officers. If we're offloading the job to outside monitoring officers, is this not in conflict with the local government acts?
That is a very good question from Councillor Boyce. All his questions are always good. There is an answer though, and it's found in the Local Government Act 1972, which says that anyone seconded on a project from another an employee from another local authority is treated for the purposes of the council's functions, whatever they are, whatever is the relevant function, as an employee of. So whereas Section 5 says that of the 1989 Act says that the monitoring officer has to be an employee, that is satisfied by the Local Government Act 72. So when we employ, as we have employed Mr. Turner on a particular case because of a conflict of interest that is ongoing, who's the monitoring officer for Essex County Council, he is therefore a secondee. He's seconded to the local authority for that project, therefore is treated as an employee.
Does that answer you, Councillor Boyce?
Of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Quelch, could we move on, please? Oh, no, sorry, I have Councillor Stilts, please.
Sorry to keep on coming these things. There can be a problem, not so much with the monitoring officer, but when we have a joint standards, what do we call it really, a tribunal hearing or hearing, there can be pressure put on. I'll put it a slightly different way. Right, now if Essex Police have a conflict of interest, then it would be Kent Police who come in and vice versa. And that's throughout the whole country. The reason is it will prevent any fear or favour. Now, the Joint Standards Committee is councillors. With fear, it could be, if you don't do what we want, we will deselect you at the next election. Favour could be, we will put you up for chairperson, leader or on county. All the latter carry an increase of financial income, but more than that, perceived standing amongst their peers. So we could have a problem where we have definitely a serious case, where pressure can be put on by a member or members. This is the way we want you to vote because, and with the what I've just said about it. So it would be more transparent to the public if we had another council within the district, because again, we could put you up for district position or not. So they're coming from outside, and it will work vice versa. As I say, the police, my sister had to do it for the Home Office, going around the different constabularies, and that's the way they work. So it's completely impartial. There can be any accusation, even from the public, that, oh, well, you only voted that way, or the result was only that way because of political pressure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stilts. Could I go to Councillor Nunn, please?
So that's not a monitoring officer issue, is it? That's a member issue. And if I understand Councillor Stilts correctly, if he's saying, members would be put under pressure to vote a particular way, a joint standards committee, that would be a very serious issue, because one of the first things I asked when I became a district councillor was, did the whip apply in the case of a joint standards committee? And the answer I was given was that it did not, and that it should not, neither should it with planning. So I think that would be a very serious issue myself.
Thank you, Councillor Nunn. Mr. Quelch, have you anything to come back with?
No, I agree with everything that's been said.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on, please.
Best practice 14, councils should report on separate bodies they have set up or which they own as part of their annual governance statement and give a full picture of their relationship with those bodies. Separate bodies created by local authorities should abide by the Nolan principle of openness and publish their board agendas and minutes and annual reports in an accessible place. Well, I'm not aware, Chairman, of any body that we have set up that falls within this best practice 14. I know we have working groups and things like that, but I don't think that's what best practice 14 is talking about. It's talking about, I believe, local authority companies, which a lot of larger councils have actually set up. Essex County Council has a whole, well, has many companies that it's established. So that's what best practice 14, in my view, is seeking to deal with. We don't have any.
Great, thank you very much. Shall we take the last one, please?
Best practice 15, senior officers should meet regularly with political group leaders or group whips to discuss standards issues. Now, there aren't any meetings that I set up on an ongoing basis with leaders of the political groups. But I would have ad hoc conversations as issues arise. And I personally think that is the best way to deal with matters. If one has just fixed meetings, I think those can be quite cosmetic. Whenever there is an issue relating to a councillor in a political group, as required, I would speak to that leader, and I have done so.
Thank you, and I would agree with you. Thank you, Mr. Quelch. Any members have any other comments to make? Thank you. Then I shall go to the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Quelch. The recommendation set out in the report is as follows: to consider the Committee on Standards in Public Life Best Practice Recommendations at Appendix 1 and make any necessary changes to standards procedures. If any member wishes to second that motion, please turn on your microphone and state your name.
Thompson, yes.
Councillor Mays.
Thank you very much. We have Councillor Thompson. It's a bit of a race, but we got there. Thank you. If any member wishes, if anyone has any comments to make further, we'll go to the vote. And if we're all happy to vote, can we agree that by
Sorry, excuse me, Chairman. I'm assuming we're incorporating the bit as suggested, the wording that the monitoring officer suggested, and we all agreed while we were there.
I believe so. Tara, is that correct?
Yes, Chairman, it is correct. It's Berna, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, no problem.
First time.
That was under recommendation. That was recommendation 6.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. Okay, so everybody's heard that. So could we agree that by assent, please?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much. So that is agreed. So now we go to item number 6, and this is to resolve.
Sorry, is there any chance for comfort break for 5 minutes?
Are we all happy to have a comfort break?
Appreciate that.
Can somebody, sorry, can we have people muting their microphones, please? We've got a lot of background noise. We want to go for comfort break. So are we saying we're going to come back? We'll come back at 15. Is 15:10 long enough, or is that too long? No, that's fine. That's 7 minutes. Okay.
Members? Okay,
yes.
You back then. Thank you.
Promptly back here at 15:10, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
One, and we're live again, Chairman.
Thank you, Berna, and hopefully we are all back in the room. I shall now move to item 6 on the agenda, which is the exclusion of the public and press. And this is to resolve that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act, and that satisfies the public interest test. And it's at this point I will say thank you to the public for attending. We wish you good afternoon, and if you could now cut the live feed, please, Berna.